Hi and welcome again. The response to my YouTube channel has been fantastic, and I want to thank everybody for watching. I'm mildly shocked and flattered at how popular it is, so we're going to keep doing it. I want to, while we continue on with making videos and fiddling with boats that we seem to do an awful lot of around here, I wanted to take a minute and tell you, first of all, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're watching this, you're probably subscribed, but I don't know what's wrong with your boat. I don't know why it doesn't run. I don't know why it stumbles and misses. I don't know why it's hard to start. And as much as I appreciate all the comments and emails and messages that we get, unfortunately, there is no way I can diagnose your problem with your boat without having it in person. There are too many variables to be considered. There's too many things that a marine mechanic will see that the average person doesn't. Now, don't get me wrong, I totally encourage people to work on their own stuff. And that's one of the reasons for these videos, is to help you work on your own parts and your own boats and motors and anything else you'd like to work on. But there's things that I just can't know if I don't have it right in front of me. I get lots of messages now. I've cleaned my carbs and it still doesn't go over 3,000 RPM. Well, first of all, was it a problem with your carburetors or carbs or single carburetor in this case? There's a whole diagnostic procedure that we go through, we marine mechanics go through. Some of it is very methodical, some of it is we look at it and go, oh yeah, well that's obvious to us, not necessarily to you. Things like wiring problems, you know, the number of times that I've gotten a boat in here, a motor in here that the customer has fiddled with and can't sort it out and doesn't know why it's not doing whatever it should be doing. And I pull the cover off or I lift the hatch and I have a look, and there's wires worn through, or there's crimp connectors that are all corroded and grungy and dirty. Oftentimes what I see, particularly with the older stuff, are things like it's multiple problems. It's not just this one wire, bad wire connection. There's a couple of bad wire connections, you've got old spark plugs, the engine oil's never been changed, and yeah, sure, it was running great last year, but all of these little factors add up to one big problem, or multiple problems that aren't even related. I have fixed, in my career, I have had more problems come in and we diagnose it and we find something and we fix it, only to send it away and find that there's actually another problem as well that was maybe masked or hidden, or we thought was included in the problem that we fixed. There's just too many variables for me to possibly be able to say, when you email me and say, well, I've done this and this and this and this, and my motor still won't idle. I'm sorry, but unless you bring it to me, there's no way that I can tell you what's actually going on there. Some of the things that I see very regularly, just last year I had a wonderful customer that we do some work on some of his boats. He's got several small boats. He had bought a new motor, a new to him motor. I think it was a 15 or a 20 horse Mercury outboard. And he bought it for fun. Thought he'd get it going. It wasn't very old. It was only a couple years old, but hadn't been used much. So it had a fuel leak, so he bought a carb kit and he pulled the carburetor apart and cleaned it all out and tried to get it to start and run, and he couldn't. So then he came back, and this went on over several months because he tinkered with it in his spare time. And then he came back and he wanted me to look at the spark plugs. He had pulled the spark plugs out and wanted me to look at them. So I looked at them and told him to, as I tell many people, just put new ones in. They're cheap and inexpensive. So he put new spark plugs in, and then he wasn't sure if he was getting spark or he wasn't, because it's sometimes hard to see when you're testing for spark. The sun is shining and you can't tell, is that a strong spark, is it a weak spark? On and on and on and on. And finally, in exasperation, he brought the motor to me. And I went through all the systems, went through my diagnostic procedure. And at the end of the day, the problem was the carburetor was still full of water. Now I don't remember if he brought his fuel tank or not. I think he did. So he brought his fuel tank, and there was a little bit of water still in the fuel tank. He had put fresh fuel in, but hadn't gotten all the water out. So he had pumped water all the way through his fuel system and into his carburetor. And he had spent months pulling his hair out trying to get his motor to run, just because he didn't go back to the carburetor because he had already cleaned it out. So, and he insisted to me the whole time through it, oh no, the carburetor's clean, I've taken it apart, it's beautiful. So just because you tell me or somebody else tells me that they've done this, that was a perfect example of, well, yes, but no. Spark plugs are another one I see all the time. This one, we put new spark plugs in. You get your trusty spark plug socket that has the rubber insert in it. You push your spark plug into there and you tighten your plug up. Well, if your spark plug socket has the rubber insert inside there, which they all do, if that socket slips ever so slightly sideways on your spark plug, it will crack the porcelain on the spark plug right down the bottom here. We'll just zoom in for a second, and it actually cracks the porcelain, where are we there, right at the very base. And you won't even see it. You won't even know you did it. And then you get a dead cylinder. And you might have been changing your spark plugs because you had a dead cylinder because the spark plugs were dirty. I've taken, I can't even tell you how many spark plugs out that somebody else has put in that is cracked along the bottom there, because the rubber insert puts a load on the porcelain, and if that socket doesn't stay on there perfect, it will crack it. I take the rubber insert out. I just don't use it. So just because you have new spark plugs in it doesn't mean that the spark plugs aren't faulty. Just because you cleaned your carburetor out doesn't mean it's clean. Did you flush your whole fuel system out? If you have contamination, I had one that had sand in his fuel system. I'm not sure how he got it in there. I had to take his fuel pump apart twice to get all the sand that had settled into the little sections in it cleaned out properly. You got to take your fuel pump apart to get the water out of it because it settles in the little low spots, and you can flush it through with your primer bulb and it won't flush the water out. So you got to take your fuel pump apart if you've had water in your fuel system, which we see a lot here. Engine oil is another one. Hard to believe, but if you haven't changed your engine oil in a long time, the rings don't seal properly. The oil looks good. I only put a couple hours on it every year. I don't need to change it. No, you actually do need to change it every year because it oxidizes, it breaks down, and then the compression rings on your pistons don't seal to the cylinder walls properly. You'll get oil coming up past them because it's kind of watery and not as sticky as it was supposed to be, and you will actually lose cylinder pressure because the oil isn't sealing on your cylinder walls properly. I see that quite often. Older motors, had a quad in here for a customer, the same thing, he couldn't get it to run right. It kind of sort of ran, but put fresh oil in it, that's all I did. Fresh oil, and I put new spark plugs in it too. Oh, it was like a brand new quad. So let's not overlook the basics. And then one last note, this has gone on a little longer than I planned, but if you're not sure what's wrong with your outboard, the absolute cheapest, or any part of your boat, the cheapest thing you can do is take it to a marine mechanic and have him diagnose it. I don't know of any mechanics that wouldn't be more than happy to charge you an hour of diagnostic time to have a look at your boat. So an hour is $160 in our shop. I don't know what it is in other parts of the world, but an hour of my time, I'll have a look at your boat, diagnose it. If it's not running properly, I can generally diagnose most problems in an hour and tell you what's wrong with it. Another 15 minutes of consultation, so now we're up to $200. And I can tell you how to fix it yourself most of the time. And if we don't have the parts on the shelf, we'll get them in for you and sell them to you. That is the best thing that you can do. It's way cheaper than replacing coil packs, as I get so many people that want new coil packs because their motor doesn't run. I've never replaced a coil pack because they hardly ever fail. They do fail sometimes, but if you haven't done a complete diagnostic and you're just replacing parts because you think this is what it is, or you saw a YouTube video that I made or somebody else made that said this might be the problem, I'm not sure you're investing your money properly. Diagnose it properly. If you have a carburetor issue, then go through your carburetor. If you have an ignition system issue, then replace those parts. We don't replace parts unless we can prove that there is a fault with them. Coil packs, we can put the oscilloscope on them, we can check them with an ohm meter. There's a whole bunch of things, but of course we need to check the trigger wheel and make sure it's getting a proper trigger. So maybe it's the trigger wheel, maybe it's the pickup. There's all sorts of things that need to be diagnosed correctly before you start throwing parts at your motor. And same with your stern drive, your lower unit, any part of your boat. If you're not sure, take it to a marine mechanic. Explain to him that you want to fix it yourself and you'd like a little bit of guidance, but you got to pay for his time. You come here and start picking my brain, or you come here and start picking somebody else's brain and don't expect to pay for it, we're just going to kick you out the door and we'll probably give you the wrong advice. Sorry guys, but that's the way it is. You come in here and want to waste my time, I will probably send you down a wild goose chase because, well, if you're too cheap to pay me for my experience, you get what you deserve, and I'm sorry. So go in there willing to pay the guy, but be upfront with him and tell him that you want to try and fix it yourself because you like doing that sort of thing. If you're any of those mechanics, if they're like me, they're going to be, yeah, by all means, here you go. And don't forget to look at this, and don't forget to do that while you're in there. And you know what? The way I do it when I'm in there is I do such and such. or I always replace this while I'm in there doing that as well, because I've found that those become a problem. It's the best $200 you're ever going to spend. Maybe less, maybe a little more, but definitely worth it. We have wonderful customers here that we've had for many, many years. All of them are very loyal and come back all the time. Other people call and are looking for a marine mechanic, and most of the time we can't help them because we're so busy. But I always encourage them to find a marine mechanic, even people that like to do it themselves. Find a marine mechanic that you know and that you trust, and get to know him. Take your boat in once a year, pay him an hour or two to give it a once-over. Even if you do your own oil changes and servicing and things like that, let a marine mechanic have a look at it once or twice a year, because when you do have that coil pack problem and you need somebody with the proper computer scanner or an oscilloscope so that he can check it out properly and diagnose it properly, you'll be a whole lot happier if you've already built the relationship with the guy, and he will be a lot more understanding and more likely to even be able to fit you in, because we're all so busy. So build a relationship with a marine mechanic, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. An hour a year, $150 a year, and get them to just have a look at your boat. You don't even have to have anything done. Just say, here's my boat, give it a once over, would you? Have a look at everything, let me know what you find. If you don't mind giving me another 15 minutes after that to tell me how to fix it. We'd all love to do that. We're all overworked. There's not enough mechanics out there, so if you want to do it yourself, we're all for it. So maybe I'll get some marine mechanics who'll watch this and chime in and say, no, don't let them do it. There's probably some out there, but myself, I encourage you to work on your own stuff if you're that way inclined and want to. So that's my little rant. I can't diagnose your motor or your boat or anything over the phone or an email or comments. I have to have it here because I have to see everything. I have to see the wiring that you didn't see. I have to see all sorts of stuff. I can certainly advise you on parts. I can certainly advise you on why did this break. I found this broken or that faulty. I have no idea how it happened or why. Is it common? Things like that. But when you have a drivability issue, no start, don't know why it's stumbling, won't rev, no power, problems like that, stumbling, missing, I can't help you with that. With the newer stuff, the big outboards and inboards with the computers, we have to scan the computer for that. You can tell me what the code is, and there's a whole diagnostic procedure that goes along with that code. And if you don't have the equipment to do the proper diagnostics, you're just throwing parts at it willy-nilly, and it's going to cost you a fortune. So you need to see a proper marine mechanic before you start spending money on parts. You're going to save money in the long run, trust me. So that's my rant. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for some more technical stuff. I've got a great one I'm working on a swim grid. I just finished refinishing. There's lots of editing in that, so it's going to take me a little while. And I've got some Bravo 3 stuff coming, and some more towboat stuff, wakeboard boat stuff, Inmar and Ilmor motors mostly. Oh, and some PCM. So lots of interesting stuff, and keep on watching. Thank you very much.